he is my least favorite person in Congress, and that says a lot.
Yeah,
That says a lot.
You gotta earn that distinction. That's hard.
I'm saying, and I'm in Debbie's district. He disgusts me on so many different levels, like the intersectionality of my disgust for Ritchie Torres, like knows bound.
Well, I also think the biggest difference between Debbie and Ritchie is that Debbie never pretended to not be a scumbag. Like Ritchie got into Congress as I'm black, I'm gay, I'm Latino. It's all these things. I'm like you guys. I'm progressive. I was inspired.
And now I'm a Zio.
Can't get more Zio than this guy. But let me tell you, it's one thing if you espouse these things. It's another thing entirely if you start basically being the the thought police, if you will, and calling up all of your Zionist organizations to get our friend Guy Christensen, who has been an amazing activist on behalf of the Palestinian cause. He got him on the cover of the New York Post. And as it turns out, Guy did decide to comment on this earlier today. Got this from Instagram.
A member of Congress who's an AIPAC millionaire is trying to sick the Capitol Police to go after me after I made a video on him exposing his genocidal rhetoric and friendships with Israeli war criminals, hoping that one day he would be held accountable for his crimes in a similar manner that the perpetrators of the Holocaust were held accountable in the Nuremberg trials after World War II. This is Ritchie Torres. He represents the Bronx district in the House, and he's taken well over $1 million from AIPAC, one of the largest spenders in the pro-Israel lobby, who has capped.
Just look at that number. Just look at that number. Pro-Israel interests spent over $250 million on U.S. elections in 2024 alone. And we all know that that number is going to go up, especially as they start to lose control, as they are losing control. But the obscenity from this one block, the Israel lobby, this type of money is absolute insanity as far as I'm concerned.
Well, this is my analysis of that. First of all, there's two congresspersons who I am friends with who just got booted out because of this money. Jamal Bowman from New York and Cori Bush from St. Louis, both of whom are African-American. And now they're going after Summer Lee, another African-American progressive who represents Pittsburgh in Congress. This is, to me, a mortal threat to one of many now, unfortunately, to our democracy. It ties into the larger issue. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. That our Supreme Court has allowed unlimited money. I think I'm talking too much. Unlimited money to influence elections. And, what AIPAC does, I actually believe this sounds a bit like a trope, so I got to be careful. But they have so much influence that they essentially control, on behalf of the Israeli government, a foreign government, U.S. government policy in the Middle East. It's the most extraordinary thing. It's like Biden, go back to Biden, he couldn't take one small step out of fear of offending those that are donating this money to maintain support for this, again, what experts believe is a genocidal policy that we are financing with our tax dollars. Okay. So, I'm older than you guys, right? Like I've been watching this show since I became a conscious political being in the 1980 election. That was the first election I voted in. I voted for Jimmy Carter, who lost to Ronald Reagan that year. But I've seen the evolution of the control of this money over our Congress and our executive branch and our political system for decades now. And it is overwhelming at this point. I mean, there was a time, it was always strong, but there was a time in the 80s and the 90s where it would back candidates who advocated for a two-state solution. It would, support the Labor Party in Israel, not just these extreme right-wingers, the Likud and the other, Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these like extremist, racist parties in Israel that are now part of the government. So, this group has been hijacked by the most extremist elements in Israeli society, deeply racist elements, people who deny even the existence of a Palestinian people who want to extinguish, if not exterminate, the Palestinians, or at least expel them forcibly from Gaza and the West Bank. So, it's gone from a kind of in a Zionist context, a kind of a centrist organization, to one that's allied with the most extremist elements in Israeli society that are now again carrying out these mass war crimes and mass atrocities in Gaza. And I've seen it with my own eyes, and they love to get scalps. They spent, I think, a record amount of money in a congressional race to unseat Jamal Bowman. I think $20 million. Like, he couldn't compete, and they're just sending a message to the other 434 members of the House, not to mention the 100 members of the Senate, that we will do this to you if you don't maintain your support for us, or at least don't oppose it too vociferously, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is an organization that has gone way beyond the idea of protecting Israel, whatever you want to call Israel, to one that's actively interfering in the functioning of our democracy and our government. I mean, what other country in the world lets a foreign government can essentially run its policy in a major part of the world? I mean, folks, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if China did that?
I'd prefer it, actually. I think I'd prefer China to.
How about neither? How about neither? Let's continue.
Nobody should, but I'm just saying, just the double standard is what I'm trying to point out. Like,
yeah.
suppose China started a PAC.
Oh, if it was the American,
hundreds
Chinese,
of millions of dollars,
right?
What? Or like there was a group of Chinese Americans who did this on behalf of the Chinese government. I mean, it couldn't happen. They'd all be brought up on criminal charges and put in jail. But this group that's aligned with Israel does it with impunity. No one even says anything about it. And Ritchie Torres, by the way, is someone who's made a cold, I would say, mercenary-like political calculation that he's going to get in bed with people who are destroying human life because he thinks he can get reelected more easily that way. It's honestly disgusting. I have no respect for that guy. None.
This is actually somewhat the fact that he called out Guy and is putting like a target on him, like publicly putting a target on him.
He's like 19 years old.
Yeah, is so despicable. That is not a congressperson's job. Is not to put targets to content creators based on their content.
Well, I'll say this. You're totally right. I want to mention something about Guy. Like, I don't agree with everything Guy says, but his viewpoint is something you do not see in the corporate dependent media in this country. Like, that clarity, that just basic facts is something that we have. I mean, Jen, I was denied that perspective my whole life. I blame myself for not seeking it out more aggressively, but I was a little busy fighting an oil company for many years. Didn't have a ton of time. But like, that perspective, not just him, but others, is really important. And you can only find it online. So for a congressman, it's totally inappropriate and out of his lane as a member of Congress to do that. That he's trying to politicize the Capitol Police against this person because of the content of his viewpoint.
It's dangerous.
And it's but of course we're seeing that constantly with the Department of Justice under Trump. We're seeing it with Columbia University. We're seeing it in many sectors of our society. I just, as an aside, I know we want to get to other topics. I just spent the weekend reading a book called Hitler's First 100 Days. I recommend it to both of you and to everyone out there. And I picked up this book. It's a really good book. It's been around for a bit. Major historian wrote it. And I wanted to read what exactly happened that allowed Hitler to take power to the extent that he did, and see if there are any parallels to what we're seeing now in our society. And it was extremely illuminating. And one of the things is people who had independent voices like Guy were severely attacked, and Germany arrested, put even in concentration camps just for opposing the Nazi ideology. And this is the authoritarian, I mean, that was blatantly fascist, whatever you want to call it. There is a minimum an authoritarian playbook being implemented right now by Trump. And part of that is to attack independent voices like this young man, me. I'm sure you guys get flack all the time. And we all have to be really vigilant because they are not into free speech when it comes to progressive voices.
Especially because they're losing their power now.
Sure.
They are.
Most
I
of our
agree
Congress.
with you. Yeah.
Yep.
In 2024, AIPAC spent money on most of the congressional races and won 386 seats. That's a majority of our entire Congress, dominated by a pro-Israel lobby. AIPAC's #1 job here in the United States is to make sure that our government keeps sending Israel bombs. That's it. Taking money from them is so criminal, so morally bankrupt. I really can't put it into more words without wasting more time in this video. It's blood money. And Ritchie Torres has enjoyed his trips to Israel. He's enjoyed meeting the war criminals who have carried out this genocide, who have spouted genocidal and dehumanizing rhetoric against the Palestinians, which Richie does as well. So when I made a video about Richie and how he's taken blood-stained money and raised awareness about the criminals who are in our government, he took notice and he spent the last week slandering me as an anti-Semite, which is a claim that has no backing. There's no truth behind it whatsoever. Anybody who knows who I am, has heard what I have to say online, knows that I don't have any problem with Jewish people at all. Nothing. Nothing. Now, in complete honesty, I thought it was funny watching Richie freak out over what I had posted about him. His libel against me didn't bother me. But just an hour ago, he went to the New York Shitpost and gave them the scoop on how he's sicking the Capitol Police after me to investigate me for supposed threats of violence, another claim which has no truth to it. In my video, and this is what he twists up, I say, now Richie, screenshots last forever. What you have done will haunt your family for eternity. And if you're still alive, you will end up in a Nuremberg trial. The meaning behind that is pretty obvious. I'm saying that when justice comes for Palestine, if Richie's still alive, meaning not old and dead and deceased or whatever, he will end up in the court alongside the rest of the people there. But there's some people, especially in our government, who are way too old that I don't expect to see in a Nuremberg trial, like Joe Biden has cancer, who unfortunately won't be alive by the time justice reaches the Palestinian people. And he won't have his day in court. That's an example of somebody who won't be alive to end up in a Nuremberg trial. And that's all I meant by that. But of course, as this whole week has been a massive character assassination on me, attempting to discredit me, labeling me as gay, or it's so wild. New York Post calling me babyface in every article they publish about me. Their gutter journalism is exactly why nobody takes the New York seriously.
New York Shitpost, that's a good one. I like that one.
Can't.
But what it also says to me, Steve, is that the more they come after people, the more desperate they're becoming, because they know that they're running out of real estate. They know that their methods are not working anymore. I tell everybody, you call me an anti-Semite, I don't give a fuck. Call me whatever you want.
I don't care anymore.
And people used to get like, I'm not an anti-Semite. Gives a shit.
I don't care anymore.
What matters is that you're on the right side of history. This has been a genocide since day one. People forget that this has been a genocide before October 7th. There were at least 700 Palestinians that were mass murdered by Israel in 2023 prior to October 7th. So that in itself, they've simply just bitten off more than they can chew. And this is like the whole thing about Trump being in power and why in a way it's a silver lining, because Trump removes the entire mask. Like there is nothing to hide. Anything that's there is going to be exposed. And eventually everyone is going to learn that that's essentially how things operate. But what we have learned is that Americans overall, they're not on board with this shit. They're just not.
No, and you know, that's even with the deception propagated by the corporate dependent media, where half the stuff is never even reported on. I mean, you know, and by the way, the official death toll in Gaza is much worse than what the New York Times reports. It's like 53,000 according to the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health, right? Which is a totally credible health ministry. It's been had super conservative in how it estimates death. But I have calculated, and you can read this, everyone, on my Substack, which is called Donziger on Justice. I calculated as of February 11th, of this year that 306,000 people have been killed in Gaza by Israel, which is 14% of Gaza's pre-conflict population. And I calculated that based not only on direct deaths, which is what military killing people, airstrikes, targeted assassinations and the like, but also indirect deaths from hunger, lack of medical care, lack of food, water, lack of shelter, lack of basic necessities like disease caused by the complete breakdown of sanitation in the food system. There are hundreds of thousands of people who have died. I mean, I estimate at this point around 350,000. And that's based, by the way, on a calculation by The Lancet, which is a peer-reviewed, very prestigious medical journal that ran the numbers and estimated there were about 700 people dying a day from indirect causes. And that is never calculated in any of the articles. It is so much worse than what people realize. And even my estimate, I mean,
I've been thinking, I'm
Yeah.
in line with that. I was probably, I'm thinking around 500,000 people.
Yeah, I'm saying I think my estimate's conservative, and even the Lancet's estimate, which is mine, is based on, they say it's conservative. So this 53,000 number is a just super underestimate. It's sort of a gift to the Israeli government. People need to start understanding the real figures about the extent of the death and from all these other causes that is now happening in Gaza.